Under the same roof, we share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flag. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World. We have so much to cover today. There's so much happening in the world, and everyone wants to know what's next. How can I be prepared? For many individuals, such as myself, that are heavy into the stock market right now, the market is down tremendously. But today is the first day that overall the market is trending back up. Obviously, any little news gives a glimmer of hope, but not knowing how this war is going to turn out, obviously it's going to continue to go down. But that's just the way of the world and how the stock market works. Today we're going to take a look at what's happening at a deeper level. We're going to cover Pete Hegseth. He did a big briefing today from the White House or from the Pentagon in regards to this war. Also, we're going to take a look at gas prices hitting $4. We're now officially approaching the amount that, by the way, Grumpy, when you speak of Disneyland, we're going to talk about that today. One of the senators is taking on heat for going to Disneyland by himself. So thank you, Grumpy, for pushing that out. But at any rate, we're going to look at gas. Gas is fast approaching the amount that it was when Joe Biden left office. What does this mean? How does it affect you on a personal level? Are you feeling the pinch when it comes to gas prices? What about healthcare? We don't hear about these very important topics that affect us here in the United States. Remember, let's do not get it twisted. Here in the United States, we had some big concerns before this war even popped off, right? Healthcare going up. A lot of you have said that your healthcare prices almost doubled at the monthly level. And here we are. We're engaging with the Middle East again. Why is that the case? Is it because of the murmurs that we hear in regards to Israel, that basically we're getting ourselves into hot water? A lot of people feel like the United States would not have been affected because Iran basically wasn't really pushing for the American people. We heard back about the midnight hammer back around the last quarter of last year, how they went in and disabled the nuclear, right? That's what the president came out to say. But remember, we cover everything on this channel, and we cover it pretty well. And I showed you guys how Bibi Netanyahu went and met with the president at Mar-a-Lago. And right after that, what happened? You saw Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Basically, they were meeting with Iran. And the next day, they dropped all of these explosives based on this meeting. A lot of people feel like happened with Bibi going to the White House or to Mar-a-Lago, and on a weekend, by the way, and convincing the president of the United States that we need to go into Iran and eradicate and take this position now. And evidently, there was a strong argument. I mean, obviously, the president of the United States is a smart man in many ways. So I'm pretty sure there's reasons as to why he chose to do this. In fact, it's weird, though, that Bibi Netanyahu came out and says, oh, the president would have never went into Iran because of me. He makes his own decisions, okay? Now, let me explain to you the problem. We're going to get into today these different press conferences. We're going to take a look at the entire speech that Hegseth gave this morning. It's very important that we cover all of this, right? Not just because we're in the stock market, but because we want to preserve our lives, and if you have children, you want to make sure that they're successful too. Now, let's just put all of this to the side for the moment. The big problem is the Epstein files. We had the Epstein files, they were flying high in the friendly skies, and all of this stuff is coming out, and people are pointing fingers saying, hey, the president of the United States is there. Bill Clinton. Remember, I went to his deposition with his wife, Hillary Clinton. They were standing right there in front of me. What a great experience that was, boots on the ground. Okay, so we get all of these people in the Epstein files. So that's why we have these rumors that perhaps we're going into Iran because Israel said you have to do this. And this is to the president of the United States. Listen, you have to go into Iran and do as I say because we have dirt on you. So you see what I mean? You see how all of this starts to get quite cloudy. And throughout of all of this, right? Check this out. I just laid out for you all of the confusion. On top of all of that, we have AI. And you don't know if a video is real or fake. I mean, some of this AI, they actually go in and they edit real videos because there's an error. And you could spend your whole lifetime and you probably wouldn't be able to pinpoint which part of this video has been corrected because it's just so real. So that's why here at Watching the World, we cover true crime. We're covering Nancy Guthrie. We're bringing on professionals. Every week I bring on a criminal defense attorney. Last week I brought on our Candace Kelly. She's a law professor. Like we try to give you this type of information. I brought you last weekend, Sunday, I brought to you Cheryl McCullen. She's one of the top homicide crime scene investigators in the United States. You see her on the big screen and she's locked in with Watching the World. There's a reason for that. But we want to cover this war. We want to cover the hot topics. And then also, I bring on other individuals such as Mama Flips to really push back, right? To help us to, because it's not so nice to just stay in your echo chamber. Oh, I love Donald Trump. Oh, I just love Joe Biden. You know, sometimes you have to come off of that way of thinking. In fact, we bring on Miss Knockouts. She keeps us in tune with a lot of things that are happening in the world that may not be big time news, but just tells us, hey, listen, Rihanna had her home shot up. What is this about? So we try to cover all bases and bring you the professional, intelligent people who perform at a high level. So today we're going to get right to it and we're going to look at what's happening in regards to the war. But here's a big problem. We have also China that is actually aiding. We knew Russia was aiding Iran. So now China is actually aiding them too. So what is this? Is this some, instead of the art of the deal, maybe they're playing the art of war and that could have serious consequences for all Americans, right? And we want to live, we love life. We're just trying to elevate. And that's why we come here to try to share conversation, good dialogue, even though none of us are actually sitting in the exact same place. Some of us are Republicans, some, as myself, are independents, some are Democrats, right? And sometimes you might switch back and forth depending on how the wind is blowing, right? Some people just root for the red or the blue just because they have that group mentality. They may even go join a gang, folks. What's wrong with some of the people who just follow anybody, anywhere, not too smart? So let's get to it. Jeff Springer's in the building. Welcome to Jeff. Jeff is in the house. Oh my, Why I Killed You TV. Shout out to you. She has a great channel. I check her out every morning. Bright and early, she's up talking about Nancy Guthrie and all of the case, and she's pretty strong. She's keeping everybody honest. That's why I support her channel. Oh, we have that official, that girl, Henny. We cover court cases together. She pulls out the transcripts. She is dynamic. Definitely check out our sisters. They're heavy hitters. And I appreciate how they roll with Watching the World. But let's get to it. Let's see the crazy things that are happening in this world. Let's see how China is now backing Iran. Folks, what's going on?
his original trip due to the ongoing conflict in Iran. The high-stakes meeting comes at a critical moment. New reports say that China and other U.S. adversaries are providing intelligence to Iran against America. Joining me now is the president for the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong.
Guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe, and also hit the hearts to bring in the algorithm. Thank you.
Foundation, Mark Clifford. Mark, great to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here again.
And of course, we've talked the last time we were together about what China did in Hong Kong and how they went in there and just threw all the freedom fighters in jail and put new national security rules down in place. And Jimmy Lai was one of those freedom fighters who we pray for. But I want to get your take on China today in terms of what it's doing in this Iran conflict. Gordon Chang joined me yesterday, and he told me that China is very involved in providing intelligence, and that intelligence this week helped Iran take out that very expensive early warning jet that Iran sent strikes into Saudi Arabia and was able to damage. Watch this.
The Russians and the Chinese almost certainly supplied the information to Iran for targeting purposes. That was a grievous loss.
In the last couple of days, right, the United States has lost some key aircraft and so much more, but nothing is more important than life. And just to think that Russia and China is aiding Iran in this type of war, and because of what we've seen so far with our country, especially with the president trying to mend the tides with Russia, and to also see how with the war between Russia and Ukraine, how the United States has been aiding Ukraine in many ways, we're starting to see the tables turn, and you have to wonder, like, what's really happening here? And these are the things you don't really hear about.
For us. There's got to be some costs on China for continuing its support of Iran.
Wall Street Journal reported that a replacement of that jet will cost $700 million. You're saying the reason that they knew where that jet was is because China provided the...
You see that China provided the information for that jet, that very expensive jet that the president was very upset about, right? Okay. China has not pulled up on the coast of America, right? But they take all the steps. They're buying, you know how much land that China has purchased here in the United States, especially around our military bases. And also they're buying loads and loads of the farms. So they're controlling not only shipping in food, but now they're controlling what we're consuming. It's a different art of war, and a lot of people are not paying attention, but they own so much of the American soil, they don't need to drop a missile or drop a bomb, right? So just to hear that they're supporting Iran is no shock to me.
Information.
Yes, from even before this war started, you had a private Chinese company, Maser Vision, showing the location of U.S. military assets in the region, along with specific coordinates. China's support for Iran is almost across the board. The only thing they don't do is they don't supply combat troops. But apart from that, China is there, and we need to recognize that.
So, you know, Gordon...
So recently I was in court for Nicolas Maduro. I'm going to give you another example. When we went into Venezuela, we were having a big debate. Guess who was boots on the ground in Venezuela? You had Russia, and you also had China. It did not stop the United States of America because of all of our high-tech military. They basically went in there. They used some technology that froze people in time, something that many people have never seen before. Some of the boots on the ground individuals said they got so hot, they felt like their heads were going to pop off. Now, all while that's happening, our military was able to go in and take out Nicolas Maduro and his wife, put them in a helicopter, and bring them back out into the United States. They came to Newburgh, New York, and basically they debriefed, whatever they did. And now he's incarcerated, a former president. I was in court with him last week. So who do we have there? We have Russia and China. We have to pay attention to this.
Chang was saying President Trump shouldn't even go to Beijing. What are your thoughts on what China has been doing in terms of supporting Iran in this war?
Well, China's been supporting Iran for years. It's been using Hong Kong and other places to help smuggle Iranian oil, help Iran get money. Hong Kong has emerged as the major smuggling site for dual-use technology that's going to build Iranian drones that are killing Ukrainians, helping the Russian war machine. So I think we have to be absolutely certain that they're helping out in this conflict as well, while trying to keep their fingerprints off. And as Gordon says, obviously not sending combat troops.
But I think President Trump is walking this balance because we can't decouple from China right now. We still have an enormous amount of supply chains there. So what would be your best advice as the president gears up for this meeting in May?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's good he's going.
I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but the president has a tough position to play right now because he's in sort of a pickle trying to navigate with Iran taking on this war when probably there's not a lot of people pushing behind it, right? You have the midterm elections coming up. That's a big concern because all of his supporters, the president's supporters, especially in some of these red states or whatever, you're starting to see in Florida that the red turned to the blue right in the same district as Mar-a-Lago. Could that be a sign of what's going to happen at midterm elections? Now, when I was at the Clintons' deposition, you know what the ring of truth that I heard with the different senators standing right in front of me, right? They were saying that the first order of business after the midterm election, because they were like, listen, the Democrats are going to win and we're going to impeach Donald Trump. And also we're going to depose him and his wife. And notice what they said. If you go back to my live, you'll hear the senator say, actually, that Melania Trump was in the files way more than Hillary. And why hasn't she had to sit for a deposition? So there's so much chaos in the air. You might see that the president is definitely under a lot of pressure because it really doesn't look good when you think about all the things that are happening.
The two sides need to talk. It's better to jaw than to war. But I think that he has to keep our strategic interests, technology, and I would argue, of course, human rights, right at the core of his visit.
All right, let me switch gears.
Okay, Shadow says he put himself in this position. Okay, New Jersey, and says like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Grumpy says, time for Elon to play bumper satellites in China. LOL. I have space subs. Okay, Grumpy, thank you so much. You guys, check out Grumpy's channel. He has funny snippets all day long. I really appreciate his style. So check him out. He's been really supportive of this channel. I want to give him all the support back that I can. Thank you.
And get your take on Hong Kong entrepreneur Jimmy Lai. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison after being found guilty of collusion and conspiracy to undermine national security. We know exactly.
So now we're going to take a look at, we're keeping our eyes on everything, but now we're going to look at it's so tough at the pump right now, right? Let's look at the prices of gas.
Average for a gallon of gas is higher than $4. This is the highest in nearly 4 years, higher than any point during the president's 2 terms. West Texas crude oil prices, the U.S. benchmark, they settle at their highest point in 4 years, and you can see they're actually up.
Lisa says Trump is not happy. All right, thank you.
From what they closed at last night, which I said was pretty high already. Let's get to CNN senior reporter Matt Egan, who is here with us. And this $4 a gallon, I mean, this is a benchmark, a pretty big psychological barrier.
Yeah, a huge psychological barrier. And one, John, that was...
I did a national average when Joe Biden left office. Gas was right around $4.60 a gallon. So we're approaching that measure right now, just for the records.
Unthinkable when the year started, right? $4 a gallon gas in March. But here we are. So the new national average, $4.02. That is well above the $2.98 a gallon before the war started, significantly higher than $3.17 at this point last year. And analysts warn that the national average could approach or even take out the all-time high of $5 a gallon that was set 4 years ago after Russia invaded Ukraine. And look, drivers in some parts of the country, they're already facing significantly higher prices, right? $4.20 a gallon or higher in Illinois, Utah, Arizona, above $5 in Washington State, approaching $6 in California. Now, obviously, this is all about the fact that the war has set off this epic supply.
Did you guys hear that? California, $6 a gallon. Anybody here from California? Tell us all about it. Whew, $6 a gallon. Good moogly.
Disruption, right? Bigger than after Russia invaded Ukraine, bigger than the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War. That's why oil prices have skyrocketed. As you mentioned, U.S. crude topping $100 a barrel, settling above that level for the first time in 4 years yesterday and trading above there today as well. The problem is that the market just cannot function if the Strait of Hormuz remains.
Now, I heard it through the grapevine that when Bibi Netanyahu approached Trump about going into Iran, he sold him on the concept that this would be short, brief, surgical. We go in, we do this. Oh, they're going to be begging. They're going to be pleading so much, they're going to change their regime and life is going to go back. And then the markets are going to go back up. Here's the issue. All we see from Iran, right? And we get to hear from them this day and time with technology, right? They're saying, listen, bring it on. We've been warning this for years. And if you bring your troops here, we're going to set them on fire. So that doesn't sound like a temporary event. We hope for that, right? This is what we hope for. But Iran is taking a different approach. And they're also being more offensive. Who would have thought that they would be striking all the neighboring countries just because they have Americans on their soil, right? So this is starting to look a little scary, but each day prices are going up. What does this mean? That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
Remains shut down. And overnight, we had another fully loaded oil tanker.
Okay, Why I Killed You TV, awesome channel. She says she works in California. All right, thank you so much. Let's see what Rick has to say. Rick says, what do you want, war or keep gas? You can't have both. Good point. Thank you.
Off the coast of Dubai that was struck by what Kuwaiti officials have blamed on an Iranian drone attack. And the investment bank Macquarie out of Australia, they're warning that if this war continues and it lasts through June and the Strait of Hormuz remains shut, you could see.
Now, guys, I'm supposed to be flying to Egypt in June. Oh, my God. So I have my trip all planned out and so forth. And it's right where they're bombing, pretty much next door. These are crazy times. Think about all the people that were, couldn't get out of Dubai and different places because this popped off all of a sudden. So we're being affected in so many different ways. I have family members that are one in Germany. These are very scary times.
Far higher prices. Oil could hit $200 a barrel. John, that does not equate to $5 a gallon gas or $6, but something like $7 a gallon gas.
If it hits $200 a barrel, all of us here at Watching the World will start carpooling together. How about that? Let's just do it.
Now, I know $200 oil, that sounds kind of crazy, but some of the oil analysts that I'm in touch with, they're not dismissing this, right? Veteran analyst Bob McNally, he told me that high 100.
We're going to make Stella and Lisa the drivers, all right? Those will be our two drivers of the day.
Hundreds or even, yes, $200 is possible if this crisis continues to drag on. And McNally, he said the market has just stopped listening to Trump. He said they're not buying it anymore. Earlier in this crisis, the market kind of believed the president's comments around a quick ending to this war, but now there's a lot more skepticism, John. And so look, I think the bottom line is the Strait of Hormuz, right? If it can reopen.
Okay, guys, we have CP Catton says 575 plus. Okay, generally in Seattle, our Democrats have added over 50 cents per gallon carbon tax. Oh my, the Democrats are adding even more. My heavens. Wine says, I'm glad to be Canadian and have an electric vehicle. All right, thank you.
Open, then you could see oil prices crash back to earth. But if not, then this pain at the pump could get worse before it gets better.
And look, we'll see how they react to the news from the president that he's considering or hinting at the fact that the United States may end its efforts there without reopening the Strait of Hormuz. With us now, CNN senior business reporter David Goldman. Great to see you.
It's good to see you.
So gas, $4.02 a gallon. And what strikes me is that a month
Guys, let's hit the like button, share, subscribe, keep hitting the hearts. Thank you.
ago it was $1 less. That's a big jump.
Yeah, and every dollar that gas prices rise, that's about $1,000 for American families over.
Yeah, that's right. Shout out. We have Canada in the building, people tuning in from around the world. That's a good deal.
Over the course of a year. So this is a lot of pain for people. And it's not just at the pump. Remember, diesel prices are also rising. They're above $5. So Now we're talking about everything that's on a truck gets more expensive. There's a lot of added cost here, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon, because President Trump today is talking about how the Strait of Hormuz might remain closed for some time. Now we're talking about maybe $150 oil, $200 oil, some analysts are saying yesterday, and that's a real possibility. That translates to maybe $5, $6 gas.
Okay, Stella says, shout out to everyone from a different country. Thank you. This is starting to get a little ridiculous with these gas prices, but maybe it'll be temporary. Put a 1 in the chat if you think that this is going to be a temporary action, a conflict. We won't even call it a war for the sake of politics. Put a 1 if you think it's temporary. Put a 2 if you think it's going to be a long time.
That's a lot of pain for people.
And these oil traders, I think, are faced with these conflicting signals all the time, right? Yesterday, the president put out his tweet saying negotiations are going well. We're talking to a much different Iranian regime. Then last night, and I happened to be here working, there's a giant Kuwaiti tanker on fire.
All right, we're seeing a lot of twos. Everybody feels like it's going to go on for quite some time. So we basically have to hunker down for the storm. And word on the street is that CNN is being purchased by, there's a deal on the table that might turn them to be a little bit more on the red side. We see politics, we see it affecting media, and that's why we try to bring you. We have people like that girl Henny, all right, and Why I Killed You TV. That's why we're at the top of the deck telling people what's really happening, even though it comes with its own cost too. Thank you.
There. And so you have these conflicting forces.
Well, that's right. And, if you look at the oil market, they're telling us a signal, right? They're giving us a sense of what to expect from this war. Right now, Brent crude, that's the international benchmark, that's trading at about $110 a barrel. If you go out, though, because you can buy futures for next month and the following month and the following.
So Aryan says they already bought CNN, so the deal closed out. Wow.
Month, and those are falling off pretty quickly.
Thank you, Aryan. Thank you.
That gives us a sense that, well, okay, oil might start to fall a little bit, but we don't get back down to $70 a barrel, which is where we were before this conflict started, until 2032.
Oh, wow.
2032? My heavens, I'll be doggone. 2032. That's something to think about. So we're going to keep our eyes on the gas and also our pockets, unfortunately. But let's move on. I always look at these big corporations, whether it's the government, whether it's religion, and you have these whistleblowers that were a big part of it. In fact, most of their lives they spent in the religion or in the government or supporting someone. Then all of a sudden they come out and they start telling their story, and it's quite a story to tell. I've been keeping my eyes on Tucker Carlson because I always saw him as a big pundit, Fox, especially for the president of the United States. But now he's coming out as an advocate against the president, and I have to wonder, why is this the case, and what does this mean? In fact, when it comes to Israel, he's on the horn every day telling everybody to stay away. Let's check out Tucker Carlson. I want you guys to pay attention to what he's saying. I try to cover all different avenues to get a full picture of what's happening in the world, and it's quite troubling what I hear from Tucker Carlson, and it has a ring of truth, believe it or not, although many people try to write it off as just weird banter. Let's check it out. Check it out. Hit the like button, share, subscribe.
Was a controversy 6 weeks or so ago around a woman called Carrie Prejean Bowler, who was a member of the president's Religious Liberty Task Force. She was expelled from it, really, from my reading, for two reasons. One, she called attention to the deaths of innocents in Gaza and made the point that their lives were as valuable as anyone else's. And two, now
you guys noticed we don't hear anything about Gaza right now, right? We don't even hear anything about Russia and Ukraine, right? These things are still happening, but pay attention to what he's saying.
Refused the basic tenets of Zionism, political Zionism, and said that she didn't have to sign up for that as a Christian, and she was expelled for that. And there were a number of religious leaders, Christian leaders, who approved of her expulsion and, in fact, who made it possible.
Bob says we are all suffering consequences of the fighting in Iran. Thank you.
You weighed in on this. Can you tell us why you did that and what you said?
Yeah, thank you, Tucker. Well, really, again.
Now, before we get into this, I want you guys to keep in mind what I went over yesterday on Palm Sunday, right? They, meaning Israel, blocked the cardinal who is from the Catholic faith, blocked him from the holy place, right? They blocked him. Keep that in mind. So now this is a big uproar. Now the Catholics are starting to protest about Israel. Okay, but in your Bible, from Genesis to Malachi, that's all Hebrew, devoted for the Israelites, Israel. And most people say that modern day Israel is synonymous with the Bible, the biblical Israel. Okay, we can contest that. But when you have Matthew to Revelation, that's the Greek scriptures, and that's where the Catholics have pretty much dominated, okay? So you have Hebrew Catholics in your Bible. This is what you're reading. Most people don't understand that at a high level, but now you have the Israel blocking the Catholics. Let's pay attention, though. Keep that in mind as you see what's happening with Gaza.
I'm a simple guy. And it comes down to basic, simple truth, ultimately. Truth is simple. Yes, it's deep, it's rich, it's hard to fathom, but it's not complicated in the way that our world is so often complicated. As you said, I think Carrie was removed because they didn't like the truth she was speaking. The truth about Gaza, which is verboten by many, the innocents that have devastatingly died there is just horrible. It truly is a Holocaust of our time. But they didn't like that truth, and they didn't like the truth of her pushing back against the agenda that is saying this political Zionism is something that Christians need to embrace. No, it's not. And the Catholic Church is very clear. From everything that I've seen, I had a conversation.
So basically, let me break it down for you. He's saying that the Israel nowadays is Zionism. Now, keep in mind, I showed you here on the channel that in New York, right, we had a big protest. The Jews in New York, they came forward and they said this. The video is on the channel. They said, we do not stand with the Israel, that's the state of Israel that we see in the Middle East, okay? This is what the Jews in New York came out and said. You could Google it. And they said, basically, this is more Zionism, and it has nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is what you get more from Genesis to Malachi that goes along with the biblical theme. Okay, so I'm just trying to help you to understand the backdrop on what this gentleman is saying. And he's saying that they do not stand with what happened to basically people in Gaza just being decimated.
With Carrie before I put out my statement, and I had the conversation because I was hearing things, and I just wanted to really, my intention with reaching out to Carrie was just to be a pastor and to offer her some support and some consolation. In the midst of that conversation, she basically challenged me and asked me, Bishop, if what you're saying you really believe, your message, my message to her, if I really believed it, was I willing to publicly speak it? And I told her I would pray about it and I would consider it. But even as I told her that I would pray about it, I knew in my heart that, I was, as we say sometimes, Christians say, I was convicted. I knew that if I was going to be the man I want to be, if I was going to be the Christian that I want to be, I had to speak up and to not attack anyone, but simply.
So what he's trying to convey is that the modern Israel is painting the picture that Christians have to embrace Zionism in order to be saved, okay? So this is what he's trying to really break down for you.
Say, and what I tried to do in a rather several more words than this, but basically was say, Carrie was removed from that committee because she was speaking truth that the powers that be didn't want to be spoken. And because of that, I felt the need to speak out for her. I don't think Carrie claims to be a sinless, some sort of perfect woman, but she was right in what she was speaking. People can say, very often, and I know you hear this all the time.
So I wanted to just show you that Israel is definitely affecting everybody pretty much throughout the world at a personal level, even when it comes down to this particular war. When it comes to religion, Christianity is one of the largest religions in the world. Also Islam, okay? Let's not get it twisted. Okay, also here, because we've gone into Iran, we started to see, I showed you guys, I try to be very systematic. I showed you the prices are going up, and people have to really take this into consideration when it's affecting your pockets, your family, because you might have your budget and you have money earmarked or allocated for certain measures. But now when you have gas and you have food and those prices are rising, well, it cuts into those other bills, or it cuts into your ability to invest and gain more money for yourself or what have you. So all of this is really squeezing us more than you can imagine. So now we're going to go back to this morning. We're going to listen to what Pete Hegseth had to say in regards to the Pentagon. And he breaks down what's happening in regards to this war, because he's the man in charge. He's the man sitting at the top directing this thing, obviously, behind the president of the United States. So it's very important to pay attention to what he has to say. And then we're going to go to Karoline Leavitt and see what she has to say as far as this press conference from the White House. But let's get to it. And guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.
Again, for years, and in this administration, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, and they won't. These troops, they want to finish this fight for their kids and their grandkids. This is about history. This is about legacy. Success matters.
So now he's saying it's the troops. The troops want to finish this for their legacy. Pay attention to words.
And because of this president and these Americans, we're closer than ever before to winning. President Trump is doing what no other president had the guts to do. Previous presidents were all talk. He's all action. On the battlefield, because of the latitude the president has given us, American firepower is only increasing. Iran's decreasing. We have more and more options, and they have less. Just 1 month in, only 1 month, we set the terms. The upcoming days will be decisive. Iran knows that, and there's almost nothing they can militarily do about it. Yes, they will still shoot some missiles, but we will shoot them down. Of note, the last 24 hours saw the lowest number of enemy missiles and drones fired by Iran. They will go underground, but we will find them. We recently destroyed another one of their command bunkers. Leaders forced to flee, no water, no power, no oxygen, no command and control. Their faith in their caves diminishing. The latest intel is clear out of CENTCOM. Our strikes are damaging the morale of the Iranian military, leading to widespread desertions, key personnel shortages, and causing frustrations amongst senior leaders. Just last night, we had 200 dynamic strikes alone. Dynamic strike is a strike where a pilot leaves, and during their flight, they get a new target set based on real-time intel given to them. A new launcher, a new location, a new troop formation. A dynamic target is one that changes while you're in the air because of improved intelligence. 200 dynamic strikes alone, in addition to the pre-planned targets. The video the president posted last night of Esfahan, an ammo depot struck by U.S. bombers. You see, you don't get to see many of those videos because, as a reminder, Iran has still shut off the internet to 99.9% of its population. But if Iran is wise, they will cut a deal. President Trump doesn't bluff, and he does not back down. You can ask Khomeini about that. The new Iranian regime should know that by now. This new regime, because regime change has occurred, should be wiser than the last. President Trump will make a deal he is willing, and the terms of the deal are known to them. If Iran is not willing, then the United States War Department will continue with even more intensity. Standing here this morning in this briefing room, in my mind's eye, I'm actually looking out at the groups I met this weekend. The pilots, the logisticians, the intel analysts, the targeters, the sustainers, the flight crews, the air defenders, the base security, those maintainers who we walked up at sunset with the chill in the air on the flight line. May God watch over all of them each day and each night. May his almighty and eternal arms of providence stretch over them and protect them and bring them peace. In the name of Jesus Christ. And amen. Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. And thank you again for being here. As operations continue, I remain deeply grateful.
Now, what's interesting is that the President of the United States says that last week it came out of his mouth that they were doing certain actions for Jesus Christ, okay? And so it's interesting to have Pete Hegseth mention Jesus Christ here. So we try to note all of these things as we cover this. It's very important.
Grateful for the service and determination of 2.8 million members of our joint force, each of whom are serving something greater than themselves. Every day, those deployed, and in many cases, those at home who are deploying forward, and bomber pulses and others put themselves in harm's way, and we owe them a deep debt of gratitude. I remain especially grateful for our fallen who gave the ultimate sacrifice. We'll never forget their valor, and their determination to do something greater than themselves. And each day we continue to earn what they've given to us. This morning, I want to share that yesterday the Joint Force had the honor of participating in the burial of Colonel Clarence Emil Bud Anderson, who passed away in May of 2024 at the ripe old age of 102. He was laid to rest in Arlington Cemetery yesterday morning alongside his wife of 70 years, Eleanor, who he married on February 23rd, 1945. She passed away in 2015 at the age of 92. Bud, yesterday, a legend to our Air Force and fighter pilots everywhere, was honored with a combination flyby of F-35s and a 4-ship of P-51 Mustangs. He was one of the most prolific flying aces of World War II and the highest scoring P-51 ace with 16 and a quarter kills in his squadron and in his group. And he served from 1942 to 1972. And his last combat tour was flying F-104 Thunder Chiefs over North Vietnam. For anyone that had the chance to meet Colonel Anderson, you knew what an incredibly special man he was. And that's true for each and every one of our World War II vets who become fewer and fewer with each passing day. They are the greatest generation and give us the gift of an incredible example as we execute Operation Epic Fury today. And Colonel Anderson, we mourn for your loss and remember that smile on the right side as you went out to do our nation's business. I'd like to now share an operational update. Our Joint Force continues to focus on our military objectives as we systematically continue to degrade and destroy Iran's ability to project power and threaten stability beyond its borders. First, the Joint Force continues to destroy Iran's ballistic missile and UAS capabilities. We remain focused on interdicting and destroying the logistical and supply chains that feed these programs. And this remains a truly joint effort prosecuted around the clock from air, land, sea, space, and cyberspace. Long-range bombers from U.S. Strategic Command are coordinating with tactical fighter aircraft from our joint force launched from bases around the region and the continental United States, while simultaneously Navy fighters from the sea and sailors continue to project power from the sea, while Army and Marine artillery units continue to execute long-range precision fires deep into enemy territory against high-value targets. Meanwhile, on the defense side, our Army and air defenders and aviators, as the Secretary talked about, remain vigilant, forming a shield to protect our forces and our partners, intercepting missiles and drones. Together, we continue to deliver precision strikes against key manufacturing nodes, component storage sites, research facilities deep within Iranian territory. And over the past 30 days, we've struck more than 11,000 targets. Given the increase in air superiority, we've successfully started to conduct the first overland B-52 missions, which allow us, as we've said before, to continue to get on top of the enemy. And as the Secretary talked about, switch toward.
So they've hit over 11,000 targets, and Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz. It's something to think about.
More and more dynamic targets servicing mobile targets around the battle space. We've continued to do the work against Iran's missile, drone, and naval production facilities, and we continue the multi-domain pressure that we've talked about. Second, on the Navy front, we continue to assert dominance over the Iranian Navy. We remain focused on targeting their mine laying capability, their naval assets, and we've now, as I mentioned briefly last time, started to work attack helicopters and other close air support assets into the naval domain. CENTCOM continues to identify and work against naval depots and storage areas. And we've taken out, again, more than 150 ships, including all Jamaran-class frigates inside their Navy. Third, we continue to prosecute our campaign against our defense industrial base at scale. This includes factories, warehouses, nuclear weapons.
So I want to mention to you guys, when this action started, the Strait of Hormuz was open. And so now the target is to work to have this strait opened up. So it's almost like a weird phenomenon that you don't hear a lot of people talking about. And that's why they're considering dropping all of these troops into the island, right, of Karg in order to get some type of leverage so that they can get control of the Strait of Hormuz, which is roughly at its closest point, narrow point, is 20 miles across. These are some tough situations that the American military troops are in. And keep in mind, this pretty much came from Israel.
Research and development labs and the associated infrastructure required for Iran to reconstitute its.
So this is why you have people online, when you go to TikTok, you go to all these places, they're saying, oh, well, have Israel send their children first as boots on the ground. So I'm giving you the background as to why you're seeing all of this on Facebook and so forth.
Combat capability. I'd like to continue my theme of highlighting the incredible contributions of Americans to our joint force. Today, I want to talk a little bit about a different front line, a line that doesn't have bunkers or guard posts, but is just as critical to our nation's security, our National Assembly lines. Today, I want to recognize a group of Americans who live at the beginning of our nation's combat power, the Americans who actually make our weapons, both inside our defense industrial base, but even more broadly inside our national industrial base. In every military option, we could not and cannot do our jobs without the men and women across our country who show up every day around the clock to a factory floor, a workshop, a laboratory, who build the weapons and capabilities we need to project American combat power at the time and place of our choosing. These great Americans, and I've had a chance to spend some time with them when I was in the private sector, are the core of American combat power. They're the machinists running high-tech CNC machines, cutting raw blocks of metal into incredibly precise parts. They're the assembly workers painstakingly taking a kit of parts and turning that into a complex guidance system or precision munition or a rocket motor or building a jet or submarine. Or they're quality assurance technicians who ensure that when a warfighter pulls a trigger, The weapon works every time. This can be and is tough and gritty work. It's not a quiet office and a desk with paper, and there's nothing wrong with that, but this is exactly the way this group of Americans likes it. I know this. I've seen it myself, and I remain deeply honored by that gift. It's often loud and dangerous work, demanding, requires absolute focus for hours at a time with deep commitment to get it.
So they're trying to build morale for this war. That's why we're seeing all of this, evidently.
Right every single time. It's hands-on work where one uncaught mistake or deviation can put an American's life at risk. A single misplaced wire, a microscopic flaw in a weld, incorrectly calibrated sensor could mean the difference between mission success or mission failure. The difference is measured in the lives of our sons and daughters who we put out around the field and on the field of battle. We rely on and trust in these great Americans, and it's not just their manufacturing skill, it's their innovative minds and their entrepreneurial spirit. From those who build exquisite capabilities down to the mom and pop machine shops all over this great country, they live at the beginning of and the core of America's combat capability, constantly adapting, constantly improving, constantly learning. And there are examples of this throughout history and current days, to include building things like the F-117 stealth fighter, the B-2 stealth bomber, making our combat capability undetectable over the enemy, to today's B-21 and F-47. It's work like in the shipyards of the East Coast and Northeast side of the United States that go out and build America's nuclear submarines that allow us to patrol around the world at the time and place of our choosing. These innovators, these workers, these incredible Americans don't get the same glory as a fighter pilot returning to a carrier deck at night or an artilleryman sending rounds downrange. And yet they show up every single day. And without them, we could not do the work that we are tasked to do. 24/7, they build the tools that we need to do our business. The skill, the commitment, the patriotism, the dedication poured into every piece of combat capability and hardware is seen and felt out at the edge of the force. As the Secretary talked about those young bomb builders out in the desert that he had the chance to see. You can see it, you can feel it, and it's real, and we're deeply grateful. So to the American workforce out there, both inside our defense industrial base and in our national industrial base, thank you on behalf of the Joint Force. We carry the weapons that you build.
Thank you. The cat's gone wild. Thank you so much.
We rely on the systems that you create, and the distance from that factory floor and that assembly line to the front line is incredibly short. Thank you. Keep it up. And to our adversaries out there, I remind you to beware of the American workforce. We continue to press forward in our military objectives. The Secretary and I remain deeply humbled by the spirit, tenacity, commitment, and grit of our 2.8 million member strong joint force. I want to, as always, thank the force and their families, and as always, remember our fallen. We carry with them and their names every day. Sir, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. He didn't note it, but in memory of Colonel Bud Anderson, the chairman himself flew his F-16 to honor him recently. And thank you for highlighting the Defense Industrial Base, the Arsenal of Freedom. It's worth noting no one has rebuilt that Defense Industrial Base faster and with more purpose than President Trump in his first term. And now we're rebuilding the Arsenal of Freedom. Our Defense Industrial Base is more vibrant today than it's been since World War II and growing rapidly. Contrast that with Iran, whose Defense Industrial Base is nearly completely destroyed. Their ability to reconstitute the weapons of war they're using now that they're hiding in underground facilities and attriting over time, their ability to rebuild that is negligible. And I think that contrast is an enduring legacy of this as well, right here.
Thank you for your time. We've had some signaling that the U.S. will retake control of the Strait of Hormuz. At that point, what military posture will be imposed to guarantee safe passage for our allies deter our enemies, and demonstrate U.S. dominance in the region? And also, can you speak to how much America's adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, how much they're supporting Iran's war machine at this point with arms and intelligence, and what we are militarily doing to punish the enemy coalition?
Appreciate both questions. On the Strait of Hormuz, there are many more vessels flowing through today than there were, as the president has arranged. The president's been clear to Iran, open it for business, or we have options, and we certainly do. And when you look at what the chairman laid out with the Navy industrial base, with coastal cruise missiles, with UAVs, with counter mine capabilities, we've been focused from the beginning on attritting and defeating those capabilities and limiting their options. There's lots we're doing as well, some of which is known, some of which is not known, to set the conditions. And I think the president was clear this morning in his truth that there are countries around the world who ought to be prepared to step up on this critical waterway as well. It's not just the United States Navy. Last time I checked, there was supposed to be a big bad Royal Navy that could be prepared to do things like that as well. So he's pointing out this is an international waterway that we use less than most, in fact, dramatically less than most. So the world ought to pay attention and be prepared to stand up. President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran. It's not just our problem set going forward, even though we have done the lion's share of preparation to ensure that that strait will be open, which is an outcome the president's been very clear on. As far as Russia and China, we know exactly what they're doing, what they are or are not doing. We don't have to air publicly what all of that is, but where necessary, we're addressing it, we're mitigating it, or we're confronting it head on. I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
No, sir. I think you covered it.
Do you have a timeline for operability in the strait?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. David Zier, Real America's Voice. And I witnessed that enthusiasm on the lines and our submarine builders and the ironworks. It's unbelievable. But I just wanted to ask you, what's the status of the delivery of any hardened bunkers for additional protection for our troops? And without getting too specific, what kind of measures are we taking to protect some of the larger, more strategic aircraft like the Sentry and other?
So this is the reporter here that just asked a question. This is the guy that was next to me at the Clinton's deposition. I don't know if you remember him, but I covered him as well.
Well, it's great question. I'll say what I witnessed where I went was a completely locked in discipline of bunker use and bunker improvement. So from the beginning, as we stated very clearly, the first thing we did was set up a defense and make sure our defensive capabilities were maxed out before any of this even started. That included fortifications as much as possible, but it also included disbursement. If all of our people are in one place, you could imagine why that's a big problem. So dispersing is part of that defeat. Alongside that disbursement is more and more bunkers. And I can tell you, talking to base commanders, talking to our allies in Israel, talking to others, rapidly fielding that and then improving those positions is a theater priority, no doubt, as are the air defenses. And the layered air defenses, it's not just Patriots and THAADs, it's fighters and defensive caps, it's other kinetic defeat systems, it's electronic warfare. So the defense of our troops and our assets is max. I will say on some of those other assets you talked about, air wings, airframes, there's some things adversaries are doing to provide info and intel that they shouldn't. We're aware of it. And ultimately we move things around and don't. One of the biggest principles you learn in the military is to not set patterns, predictable patterns. And so commanders are working hard to adjust in real time with those systems and make sure they're in the right places and not easily targetable. Jillian.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. The U.S. and Iran appear right now publicly to disagree about whether there are these negotiations ongoing. What impact does that have on military strategy? Does it have any bearing at all? And General, the president wrote yesterday that the U.S. might destroy Iran's electricity generating plants and oil wells. Those are his words before ending this operation. Is there a way to do either of those things without seriously jeopardizing or seriously harming civilians?
So on the talks, I can tell you, having been with Steve and Jared and the vice president and Marco and many others yesterday, they are very real. They are ongoing. They're active. And I think gaining strength. And we appreciate that. As I said in my remarks, we would much prefer to get a deal. If Iran was willing to relinquish material they have and ambitions they have. Open this. Great. That's the goal. We don't want to.
All right, guys. Bear says it seems like you gave away more than you're taking. Okay. And also Rick says that this could go on for years. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Have to do more militarily than we have to. But I didn't mean it flippantly when I said, in the meantime, we'll negotiate with bombs. Our job is to ensure that we compel Iran to realize that this new regime, this regime in charge, is in a better place if they make that deal. And so we'll continue. We're working hand in hand, but the primary effort is a deal. We want that deal to be accomplished if at all possible. If not, then we're prepared to continue.
Secretary, what happened at
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. We're always thinking about those considerations and develop options to be able to mitigate those risks pursuant to the normal practices that we do in the military. So,
thank you, Mr. Secretary. I know you slightly addressed this already, but just on the Strait of Hormuz, is opening the strait an essential objective to Operation Epic Fury, or is that the job of those other countries? And then secondly, without asking you to comment on things that you can't talk about, what is your message to Americans who love the president and strongly believe in him, but are very worried about this notion of boots on the ground?
Well, first on the Strait of Hormuz, our core objectives from this podium, from day one, from me, from the chairman, from the president, from the vice president, from Secretary Rubio and others have been clear. Defense missile production and missile programs, so their entire missile program, defense industrial base and production ability to build, and Navy and power projection. So those have been, and then of course, wrapping it all is Iran's never going to have a nuclear weapon. So
Guys, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. And hit the hearts and so forth. Thanks.
those have been very clear. Defeating the Navy is a core part of ensuring they can't project that kind of power. But ultimately, I think the president's truth this morning lays that out very well, that this Strait of Hormuz issue, which we've set the conditions for success, and we will make sure Iran knows that very clearly, is not just a United States of America problem set. We've been willing to lead. President Trump's led the entire time, but it's not just us. So ultimately, I think other countries should pay attention when the president speaks. He's proven that when he speaks, he means something. And he's pointing out, you might want to start learning how to fight for yourself. It's something some of us have been saying for quite some time. You can't just have flags. You have to have formations. You can't just have a few ships. You have enough to affect change. Those things matter in a dangerous world with ascendant adversaries. That's why the chairman's talking about our industrial base.
Good afternoon, Brittany. Welcome in.
That's why we're launching the Arsenal of Freedom tour to revive our defense industrial base. President Trump doing it in a way that nobody else has. As far as President Trump and boots on the ground, I don't understand why the base, which they have already, they understand, wouldn't have faith in his ability to execute on this. Look at his track record of pursuing peace through strength, America first outcomes. And what he's simply saying, and it's exactly true, and I've said from this podium too, we're not going to foreclose any option. You can't fight and win a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. Our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we could come at them with boots on the ground. And guess what? There are. So if we needed to, we could execute those options on behalf of the President of the United States and this department. Or maybe we don't have to.
You know, it's so amazing. We get to hear these briefings, and believe me, I enjoy the briefings. I definitely support our country. I live in America, so it's America first, definitely. But they give these press conferences and they talk about all the ways of war as though Iran is not watching these videos. So are they really telling us the truth? Because if you are, then Iran knows your game plan, right? So I just find it intriguing how this works at that level.
To use them at all. Maybe negotiations work, or maybe there's a different approach. But the point is to be unpredictable in that. Certainly not let anybody know what you're willing to do or not do. But if anybody has internalized the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan, as the first one, President Trump, to call them out for what they are, he's not going to repeat those lessons. And I think I've been very clear about that from the podium. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. A question for you and then a question for General Kane. You said we're a month into the Operation Epic Fury. How long until the objectives are achieved? And is there a scenario where a deal is struck before the objectives have been achieved? And then for General Kane, there's been lots of media coverage that suggested a ground invasion is imminent. What other purposes might the soldiers and the Marines who have been
deployed over to the Middle East serve in this conflict?
Well, just like the previous question, it's sort of military 101. Don't tell your enemy what you're willing to do or not do, and don't tell your enemy when you're willing to stop, especially an enemy that likes to hide in bunkers and try to hoard their missiles and hope you'll wait you out. So that's not a question I'm going to answer, or the president has said definitively. We have our own goals and guidance and things military objectives that we're moving toward and things that we look at. And as he's articulated, he's said 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, it could be any particular number, but we would never reveal precisely what it is, because our goal is to finish those objectives. And we're well on our way. And the chairman and I look at this every single day.
Okay, guys, I want to thank you for the comments. JCat, a strong supporter of the channel, says, mark my word, when the whole Iran thing is over, we'll be at the same position we were at before this war, but we will have thousands of Americans lost, but Trump will spin it as a win. Thank you, JCat. Thank you.
It will be the president's determination and the president's determination alone when those objectives are complete and when it serves the interest of the American people to cut that deal, to make sure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear capability, and ultimately that our objectives, our interests are advanced. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, just to answer your question, Reagan, the range of military options that those forces can offer are extensive, not just limited to what you mentioned in terms of forces on the ground. And I wouldn't want to take away the president's decision space, but there are a multitude of things, not the least of which is Iran should note that they're out there and that they are a pressure point. And so they should carefully consider, I think, at the diplomatic level, not my job as a chairman, but at the diplomatic level, to consider what's in front of them.
Jerry.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, the U.S. government, I see, assessed for many years that Iran is protecting al-Qaeda senior leaders, including the current Emir Saif al-Idil. Does the U.S. assess that he's still in Iran? Has he fled to Afghanistan? Is he on a target list? And Mr. Chairman, based on CENTCOM figures and open source, Iranian daily missile barrages and drone launches have indeed dropped dramatically since the start of the war, but they're not at zero.
So I want to give you guys some inside information just from being boots on the ground with a lot of these reporters and familiar faces. Whenever you see them reading out of the phone, it's because the question is actually coming from corporate instead of your own ideas. That's how the big media works. Just to give you some insight, you just can't say what you want to say. Everything pretty much has to be approved and also go through the legal department.
And they seem to have maintained some level of low but stable numbers. Perhaps they've dropped a little bit more in recent days. How do we get that close?
So he read the question that from his phone like this, right? More than likely that's coming from corporate, like the big name. Now he's trying to articulate what he just read. You follow? I don't know for sure, but I'm giving you an idea.
Closer to zero, and what impact is Iran's degraded but still very real capability impacting current and future operations?
So I won't speak to a particular target. I'll just say that al-Qaeda remains our enemy, obviously. And there are a lot of people on our target list in Iran. And if they were to be harboring al-Qaeda, they would certainly fit that list.
Just quickly, the mobile targets that they have that we continue to service, as the secretary talked about, the 200 hits that were done last night. That's one component of continuing to lower that. The second and more long term impact that we're having is the strikes against their defense industrial base at scale, which will not allow them to reload after that. So we do continue to see a trend down. They are still shooting, and we do continue to exert significant pressure against both sides of that system.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for the question. Do you still believe, you said previously that the Iranian leadership would surrender? Do you still believe that? And is the United States still committed to NATO's collective defense? And to Chairman King, could you give us a sense of your thinking about the legality of striking desalinization plants if the president were to order that?
I will just say that any mission that ends on our terms going to call it a surrender, call it a defeat, call it what you want. We remain committed to a conflict that ends on our terms and the president's terms. There's no doubt about that. And as far as NATO is concerned, that's a decision that'll be left to the president. But I'll just say a lot has been laid bare. A lot has been shown to the world about what our allies would be willing to do for the United States of America when we undertake an effort of this scope on behalf of the free world. These are missiles that don't even range the United States of America. They range allies and others. And yet when we ask for additional assistance or simple access basing overflight, we get questions or roadblocks or hesitations. And the president's pointing out, you don't have much of an alliance.
You guys catch what he just said, right? So we're not in the range of these missiles, right? But that's what we were told initially. You know, this is to prevent us from getting hit. But now he's saying the individuals like Europe that are in the range of being struck, they don't want to support America. This is something to think about. They don't want, yet the threat is closer to them. You just have to ask yourself why. That's all. I just say keep imploring critical thinking.
If you have countries that are not willing to stand with you when you need them. He's simply pointing that out.
The president asked these other countries, hey, come and help me with this Strait of Hormuz, right? It's affecting the global economy at a grand scale. And guess how many of them actually showed up?
Ultimately, it'll be his decision of what that looks like after this is complete.
I'll just, I won't talk about any particular target. This really builds on Jillian's question, too, that I don't think I completely answered. But, you know, the joint force is the most professional force in the world. And we have numerous processes and systems to carefully consider the whole range of considerations from civilian risk to legal considerations with any target. And as targets come before us, we run them through the same process that we always do and always strike lawful targets in accordance with the normal procedures that we use.
No quarter, no mercy for enemy combatants, as Hegseth has said.
For me?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. I appreciate it. On Sunday, President Trump said that Iran's first regime was all destroyed and the second one is mostly dead. And the third regime that we're on right now has been much more reasonable in negotiations. Do you agree with that assessment and why?
I would defer to the negotiating team there. They're the ones talking to him, but they're getting a back and forth on terms, which is a productive development. We stand right there next to our negotiating team, always willing and prepared to put them in an even better position.
Okay, guys, Lisa is out shopping right now. Lisa, tell us about prices. Are prices up? Are they down? Or are they the same as the last time you were shopping?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so what do you guys think in regards to this? Do you know anything more than what we had seen before in regards to this war? See so many different comments coming in. I appreciate all of the support. But now we're going to take a look at the press conference with Karoline Leavitt and see what's happening in regards to a lot of the questions that you probably have on a day-to-day, just trying to figure out what's happening in regards to this war. Let's check it out.
Could you hear our amen in there? We just said a little loud prayer as a team. In this Holy Week, President Trump and the First Lady are joining in prayer with Christians celebrating the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Okay, so there you have it again, more Jesus Christ. So it looks like this administration is very spiritual and followers of Christ Jesus, right?
Wednesday, the president will host an Easter lunch in the East Room with faith leaders across the country to celebrate Holy Week. With respect to the ongoing major combat operations in Iran, Operation Epic Fury is moving ahead successfully and according to plan. With each passing day, the United States military is increasing its...
So everybody is celebrating Holy Week, but we saw last Sunday that Israel blocked the Catholics, the cardinals, from worshiping at the holy place.
Advantage over the terrorist Iranian regime. More than 11,000 enemy targets have been struck to date, each strike further crippling the regime's offensive and defensive capabilities and creating more leverage for the United States and our allies. Compared to the start of the operation, Iran's ballistic missile and drone attacks are down by roughly 90%. The United States is also decimating the Iranian regime's navy. We have destroyed more than 150 of their naval vessels so far, including 92% of their largest vessels. The Iranian Navy has no vessels operating in major regional waterways and no ability to project naval power, which is why they've been assessed as combat ineffective. Our military continues to obliterate Iran's defense industrial base, with nearly 70% of their missile, drone, and naval production facilities and shipyards damaged or destroyed thus far, significantly reducing their ability to pose future threats in the region. U.S. and Israeli joint forces control the skies and have asserted air dominance over Iran, completing more than 11,000 successful combat flights thus far. The trend remains clear. The United States is conducting more intense, targeted strikes with devastating combat power with each passing day to destroy the threat posed by the Iranian terrorist regime, as President Trump sought out to do a month ago. It's no surprise that we are seeing the remaining elements of the regime become increasingly eager to end the destruction and come to the negotiating table while they still can. Despite all of
So I just want to point out, and again, I don't give you guys a spin on it. I just put out the facts that we hear in the news. A lot of people, they come in, they haven't even followed the channel for more than 5 minutes, and then they try to put the channel in a box and says, oh, you're a Trump supporter. Oh, you are a Democrat, whatever, right? These people are nuts, right, sometimes. But let's get back to the main point, is that the Catholic Pope had come forward and said, listen, if you are pushing war, if you participate in war, then God will not hear your prayers. So I hear a conflict when I hear so much coming from the government about Jesus, but yet the Pope is saying, listen, your prayers are inhibited. God does not even want to hear from you because you are not about peace, you're about war. How do you interpret that? How do you rationalize that within your own thinking, in your own heart? Tell us in the comments, how do you make sense of this? It seems like a contradiction sometimes.
the public posturing you hear from the regime and false reporting, talks are continuing and going well. What is said publicly is, of course, much different than what's being communicated to us privately. As a result, President Trump issued a 10-day pause to postpone planned strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. This remains a truly once-in-a-generation opportunity for the regime to make a good deal with the United States, permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions, and stop acting as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. If the Iranians reject this golden opportunity, the greatest military in the history of the world continues to stand by to provide President Trump with every option available to ensure this regime continues to pay a grave price. One way or another, Iran will no longer have the credible ability to threaten the United States or our allies, which is, of course, the overall objective and mission the president set out when he launched Operation Epic Fury. Unfortunately, even as President Trump is working hard every single day to protect the United States from foreign enemies, Democrats on Capitol Hill have failed to do the same here at home by keeping the Department of Homeland Security unfunded. Over the past 6 weeks, Democrats in Congress have pushed our air travel system to its breaking point.
Guys, hit the like button, share, subscribe. Thank you. I see a lot of great comments today. I want you guys to lock in. Make sure you subscribe and keep coming back.
And inflicted massive pain on Americans with their reckless political games. 500 TSA officers quit their jobs. Thousands more were calling out sick at record rates due to the lack of pay. This resulted in security wait times exceeding 3 hours at major airports across the country, creating nightmares for millions of Americans. Overall morale among TSA staff plummeted as well. All of this creating an unacceptable heightened security risk. Because of the Democrats' unwillingness to do their basic job of funding DHS, President Trump determined that these circumstances constituted an emergency, compromising American security. That's why last week he accordingly signed a presidential memorandum directing the Secretary of Homeland Security to work with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget here at the White House to use those funds with a reasonable and logical nexus to TSA operations to provide TSA employees with the compensation and benefits that would have accrued to them but for the Democrat-led DHS shutdown. This bold and necessary action by President Trump will ensure our TSA workers receive their hard-earned paychecks. It should not have come to this point, But President Trump will always do what's right by the American people, and he found a way to do that, to get TSA paid, ensuring that these federal workers who perform critical public safety responsibilities.
A lot of these TSA workers make between maybe 35 to maybe 45,000 a year. And within the last year, they've had 2 government shutdowns, and one went for over 30 some days or more. And then again, they turn around and have another one. When the average American, when most people are living from paycheck to paycheck. So when these people fall on their face, who's to blame? Let's see what everybody has to say about that.
Can feed their families, pay their rent, and show up to work is something the president was honored to do. But this moment should be an eye-opening one for the American people. Let's be clear about what is happening. Democrat members of Congress are more than happy to put your safety at risk because they oppose the president's administration and his administration's efforts to enforce our nation's immigration law. Democrats refuse to fund ICE because they want millions and millions of illegal aliens to pour into the country just like they were under the Biden administration. They want murderers and rapists and thugs to remain in your communities rather than be removed by ICE and Border Patrol agents. The Democrats created this mess. They are the reason for long lines at airports and tens of thousands of employees going without pay.
Oh my, it's the no good Democrats. The reason why in the airport we have to wait for 5 hours just to get on a plane and gas prices are going up. It's the Democrats, according to her.
Once again, President Trump is cleaning up their mess because he cares more about the American people than destructive, petty, partisan politics. With that, I will take your questions today. Here in our new media seat, we have Wid Lyman. Thank you for being here. And why don't you
All this time it was the Democrats. Who would have known that? Wow.
kick us off?
Thank you. Happy Easter.
Thank you. You as well.
2 questions for you. Thank you. There are some concerns the administration is starting to change its position on deportations, border enforcement, possibly asylum policies. What would you say to Americans that are somewhat concerned that the shift has happened?
Sure. Well, while there has, of course, been a change in leadership at the Department of Homeland Security with former Senator, now Secretary Mullen, joining the president's cabinet, I can assure the American people there has not been a change in policy. It has always been the policy of this president and this administration to deport the worst of the worst illegal alien criminals from our communities. That's something I know Secretary Mullen remains wholeheartedly committed to doing. And it's something that is overwhelmingly popular with the American people. And it's something that is necessary to protect our homeland and to prevent deaths of Americans in our country. Just last week, Sheridan Gorman, a young woman in Chicago, was shot and killed on the street walking with her friends outside of her university by an illegal alien from Venezuela who had no right to be here in the first place. And it's despicable that Democrats are currently defunding the department that's responsible for removing illegal aliens like that. And I would also add it's despicable that the lack of coverage of this young woman's case, of her life, and the way that it was tragically cut short. I saw a survey over the weekend that I'd like to bring to all of your attention. This is the media coverage of the case of Sheridan Gorman. You have ABC News has spent 1 minute and 19 seconds between 2 days when this case was first alerted. You have CBS 2 minutes and 1 second. You have NBC 23 seconds spent on the life of a young, beautiful American woman whose life was taken short by an illegal alien who should have never been here in the first place, when we are in the middle of a battle on Capitol Hill with a major political party, the Democrat Party, who wants to defund the agency that is responsible for protecting Americans. I think her life was worth more than 23 seconds on cable television. And I think the people in this room have a responsibility to report on cases like this, because it just exemplifies why the president believes so strongly in deporting illegal aliens from our communities. And thank you for the question. Dasha, go ahead.
Caroline, I have 2 questions, one on Iran and one on DHS funding. On Iran, the president has said that the administration is talking to a new and more reasonable regime. How confident are you that they are legitimate and have enough grip on power? Marco Rubio said earlier that he's not sure and it's not clear whether they will be in power. So are you also talking to other factions? As a president is trying to make a deal, how do you ensure that you're making a deal with the people who can actually implement it?
Well, that's part of the ongoing process that's taking place and the ongoing negotiations. Of course, anything that they say to us privately will be tested, and we will ensure that they are being held accountable to their word. And if they are not, the president has laid out the military consequences that the Iranian regime will see if they don't hold true to the words that we are hearing privately behind the scenes. When the president says more reasonable, again, these folks are appearing more reasonable behind the scenes privately in these conversations than perhaps some of the previous leaders who are now no longer on planet Earth because they lied to the United States and they strung us along in negotiations, and that was unacceptable to the president, which is why many of the previous leaders were killed. So again, this is another historic opportunity for Iran to do the right thing, to rid themselves of their nuclear ambitions and to come to a deal with this president and the administration. Or again, they will see the grave consequences of the United States Armed Forces, which they are continuing to see every day throughout this operation.
On DHS, how long can the administration keep paying TSA without action from Congress? And not to be hyperbolic, but given the airports were really the pain point that was pushing both sides to talk to each other. I mean, do you see a way for DHS to reopen? Is it possible that this keeps going through the midterms?
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, of course, the president just can't keep signing presidential memorandums and proclamations every time Congress fails to do its job and every time Democrats are holding our entire country hostage, picking and choosing which programs and agencies they want to fund just because they don't like this administration's policies. That's not how it's supposed to work. They voted 7 times against funding DHS over partisan and political reasons. And so, again, the president has stepped in to do the right thing at this moment in time, but the president is also encouraging Congress to come back to Washington to permanently fix this problem and to fund and reopen the Department of Homeland Security entirely.
Caroline.
Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 2 questions, one on TSA, one on Iran. On TSA, for ordinary Americans watching the briefing, how long until everything goes back to normal at airports after the president's action? And then on Iran, on the time frame, President Trump initially said about 4 weeks. Secretary of State Rubio on Friday reportedly said it might be another 2 to 4. Is 2 to 4 the current ballpark that the administration is thinking?
With respect to the timeline, again, the president, commander-in-chief, the Pentagon has always stated 4 to 6 weeks estimated timeline for Operation Epic Fury. We're on day 30 today. So again, you do the math on how much longer the Pentagon needs to fully achieve the objectives of Operation Epic.
Okay, guys, so we'll take a note of that. We have another 4 weeks, perhaps, of this war. Let's see.
Fury, which I will reiterate, destroy the Iranian Navy, destroy their ballistic missiles, dismantle their missile and drone production infrastructure, significantly weaken their proxies throughout the course of this operation, and then, of course, preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. To your first question, Stephen, about TSA and airports, nothing will be truly normal again until Democrats do the right thing to fund this agency fully. Again, the president has stepped in the meantime to do what's right to end this crisis that we've had at air travel and at airports across the country in the meantime. But again, Congress needs to come back. Democrats need to fund the Department of Homeland Security so we can formally and fully get these great employees paid long into the future. Jonathan.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. 2 questions regarding the financial costs of the war. Back during the Persian Gulf War, 1990, 1991, Arab countries paid for the vast majority of the cost of the war. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Who's paying for the cost of this war? Will those Arab countries step up to do just that?
Well, I think it's something the president would be quite interested in calling them to do. I won't get ahead of him on that, but certainly it's an idea that I know that he has and something that I think you'll hear more from him on.
And then secondly, the cost of diesel is averaging at $5.38 a gallon right now. What's the message from the Trump administration to truck drivers who are dealing with those high fuel costs right now?
Again, we understand, we hear you, we see you. We are fully tracking this short-term fluctuation in oil and in diesel prices. And that's why the president and the administration have continually announced robust actions to provide stability in the global energy market. As you know, political risk insurance, one of those actions, allowing countries to purchase sanctioned oil just to increase the supply. In the meantime, we've worked to release 400 billion barrels of oil and refined products as well. We issued the 60-day Jones Act waiver. All of this has, with the goal of increasing supply to create stabilization in the market in the meantime. But the overall message, as we've repeatedly stated, is, again, these are short-term actions and short-term price fluctuations for the long-term benefit of ending the threat that Iran poses to the United States of America, our troops, and our allies in the region, and ensuring that this regime can no longer control the world's free flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz, which is something the administration continues to tackle day by day as well.
Jennifer. Just two questions. Which Jennifer?
I'll go to both of them.
Go ahead. So two questions. One on China and one on Iran. On China, ahead of the president's trip to Beijing, will there be a working level meeting with Secretary Bessent, Jameson Greer, et cetera? And when will that be?
I do expect cabinet officials to travel to China ahead of time. I don't have a readout on their schedules for you, but this is something we typically do with international travel, as you know. So I'll talk to the Treasury Department and the cabinet myself, and we'll get you that answer. But we do expect them to move ahead of time.
Okay, and thank you. And on Iran, if Iran is kind of cherry picking what tankers get to go through the strait now and contemplating big tolls on those tankers, is that consistent, or how is that consistent really with the president's message about really wanting the strait to be fully open? Does the administration support a regime or system where Iran is effectively charging tolls on these vessels to access?
That's not something we support, and I would reject that they are cherry picking. In fact, as you know, these tankers that are moving through, the 10 that were previously announced, and now the new 20, the announcement of 20 additional tankers, which we expect to see over the coming days, are a result of the direct and indirect talks that are taking place between the United States and Iran. So you wouldn't have seen those tankers if not for the president's diplomacy and his team engaging on this matter, which we expect that compliance moving forward. And it's, again, something that we're working on very closely.
Sure.
And behind me, in the back right there, you put up your hand very excitingly. Go ahead.
Hannah from News Nation. Thank you. Thanks for taking my question. I have two for you real quick. There are reports that Republicans are weighing cuts to healthcare in order to make way for that $200 billion for the Pentagon and Operation Epic Fury. Is that a trade-off that President Trump supports?
I've seen these reports. I haven't spoken to the president about it, nor have I heard this being discussed in any high-level meetings here at the White House. I don't want to weigh in definitively because I just haven't heard that being discussed here in the West Wing.
And then secondly, I know President Trump says we're ahead of schedule in achieving his military objectives in Iran. He laid out that 4 to 6 week timetable for this conflict, and we're now within week 5. So how do you square kind of those two?
Well, 4 to 6 weeks estimated timeline. Again, you just said we're on day 30 of the operation. I just provided you with some of the updates from the Pentagon directly in achieving the objectives, and the military has been enormously successful. I think we should all be very proud of our armed forces for what they have done over the past 30 days. The mission will continue until the objectives are achieved, and that 4 to 6 week timeline does remain right now. I don't have any updates for you on that.
Yeah, like others, one on TSA, one on Iran. On Iran, I know it's tough to engage in hypotheticals, but I feel like this is one that you could engage in if the president does seek.
Probably not.
If the president does seek, or the United States seeks a ground war, does he intend to get congressional authorization of that march?
Look, the president has been asked about boots on the ground or alleged ground operations various times. He's obviously declined to rule them out. It's the Pentagon's job to provide maximum optionality to the president. It does not mean he's made a decision, nor would he ever notify the media of such decision as not to tip off our enemy. With respect to abiding by Congress and the rule of law, that's something the administration will, of course, always do. And it's something that we have great respect for Congress. The president does with military operations. In fact, prior to the launch of Operation Epic Fury, as you know, the administration gave a courtesy notice to Congress in the Gang of Eight, and top-level administration officials and cabinet secretaries have gone to Congress multiple times over the past 30 days to provide those courtesy briefings to Congress when requested.
TSA quickly, I've been asked by multiple Trump supporters that have said, given the fact that the president on that Friday gave that memorandum informing DHS to pay TSA workers, I know there's a lot of negotiations involved in a shutdown of this size. Why did the president not sooner issue that payment to TSA workers?
Well, it's because of the Democrats voting 7 times against reopening the Department of Homeland Security that we came to a place
So, again, it was because of the Democrats.
of an existential crisis. I mean, you saw the lines at various major airports across the country, American travelers really paying the price for Democrats' partisan games. And so the president worked with his legal team here at the White House and the Office of Management and Budget to find a solution to take care of the emergency that we were overseeing and air travel across the country. And it's because of the president that TSA agents are being paid. But again, he's calling on Congress to do the right thing, to come back to Washington and to fund and reopen the Department of Homeland Security fully. Sure.
Hi, Lindsay Ellis from the Wall Street Journal. I'm trying to square the 4 objectives laid out by the administration with the goal of reopening fully the Strait of Hormuz. Would President Trump declare victory and wind down military operations if the 4 objectives are met, but still passage remains quite slow through the strait?
Look, as I've said repeatedly and as the president has laid out, the objectives of Operation Epic Fury are as follows.
Guys, we're at war and we're trying to fund the DHS. Isn't that crazy? I mean, who comes up with this?
Destroying the Iranian Navy, destroying their ballistic missiles, dismantling their defense industrial infrastructure that produces those weapons that have long threatened the United States and our allies, and then, of course, preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. The full reopening of the strait is something the administration is working towards, but the core objectives of the operation have been clearly defined for the American people by the commander-in-chief.
The president posted this morning about his threat that on leaving Iran, he said we might be blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, Harg Island, and possibly all desalinization plants. Under international law, striking civilian infrastructure like that is generally prohibited. Why is the president threatening what would amount to potentially a war crime with the U.S. military? And how do you square that with the administration repeatedly saying that the U.S. does not target civilians?
Look, the president has made it quite clear to the Iranian regime at this moment in time, as evidenced by the statement that you just read, that their best move is to make a deal, or else the United States Armed Forces has capabilities beyond their wildest imagination, and the president is not afraid to use them. That's not what I said, Garrett. And you're saying the word potential for a reason, because I'm sure some experts are telling you that in your ear to try to ask me that question. Of course, this administration and the United States Armed Forces will always act within the confines of the law. But with respect to achieving the full objectives of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump is going to move forward unabated, and he expects the Iranian regime to make a deal with the administration.
To that end, which of those objectives would destroying a desalinization plant most help?
Haley, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to follow up on Iran. When you're describing that the Iranians you're in contact with are being more reasonable this time around in discussions, what specifically are you hearing that is leading you to that conclusion, and how are you defining what's reasonable versus unreasonable in that regard?
I'm not going to detail the private and sensitive conversations that are taking place between the United States and Iran right now.
But generally speaking,
the president gave you the answer. What we're hearing from them is more reasonable. They have agreed to some of the points the United States laid out, as the president said last night aboard Air Force One. But again, as for the specifics, as these negotiations are ongoing, we're not going to broadcast them to the world unless the president chooses to do so, which he has the full right to do as the leader of the free world.
On Cuba, the president threatened to tariff any country that would send oil to Cuba, but now the U.S. is letting this Russian tanker to Cuba. Is this a policy change, or is he willing to let more tankers into Cuba now?
This is not a policy change. There has not been a formal change in sanction policy. As the president said last night, we allowed this ship to reach Cuba in order to provide humanitarian needs to the Cuban people. These decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis. And as the administration has said, Cuba's non-functional economy cannot be fixed unless they undergo dramatic political and leadership change. But there has been no formal change with respect to sanction policy.
So you could expect more tankers to go to Cuba?
Again, these decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis right now.
Thanks, Caroline. You addressed this a little bit in the opening, but just to follow up, because Americans are sort of seeing these conflicting messages between the United States and Iran. I know the president insists that negotiations are underway. As you just mentioned, he's also said that Iran has agreed to most of the 15 points. We just heard from Iran again. They're saying no negotiations are taking place. They're calling the proposal excessive, unrealistic. So how do you square that? How do you explain that discrepancy between the two?
I think the American people are smart enough not to take the word of a terrorist regime that has chanted death to America for 47 years at their word. And I hope the journalists in this room are wise enough not to take an Iranian regime that has repeatedly lied about our country, about our values, about everyone in this room, frankly, for nearly 5 decades. So I think the American public are smart enough to understand that.
Just to follow up on the objectives, you've laid them out, but I know the president has set a deadline for April 6th in just 1 week. What does the president need to see to not move forward with those strikes by April 6th?
Well, I think he said it in his Truth Social post this morning. He wants to see a deal over the next 10 days. That timeline is waning, several days left, and we'll see. I won't get ahead of it. We'll see what happens in the end of the 10-day period.
Caroline, thank you. One on Iran, one on the shutdown. The president continues to say the U.S. is in conversations with a more reasonable regime, but there are now hundreds of U.S. Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEALs and Army Rangers in the Middle East, as well as thousands of other troops already deployed. So is he trying to end or intensify the conflict?
The president is focused on achieving the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. With respect to forces that are on the ground in the Middle East, it's the job of the Pentagon to create maximum optionality for the commander-in-chief. It does not mean the president has made any additional decisions. Again, he remains focused on ensuring that the Pentagon continues to achieve the objectives of the operation that was launched 30 days ago, and we're well on our way to doing that.
So if an American sit at home hearing him say, I want to talk, but I keep seeing them send troops to that region, what are they to make of what's going on?
There's 2 tracks here. The president has always said that diplomacy is his number one option and priority. Again,
So I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. He's basically asking the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is saying, listen, we're in peace talks with a certain regime there. But at the same time, he's sending in all of these ground troops, these troops into the region, into Iran. So he's asking, is this a contradiction? What's happening? What do you guys think is actually happening in regards to that?
he tried earnestly, in good faith, to engage in diplomacy with the Iranian regime prior to this operation being launched in the first place. He wanted to strike a deal, and he sent his top negotiators to do so. They spent extensive amount of time and effort trying to strike a deal, and unfortunately, the previous regime, again, many of those leaders no longer with us here on Earth because they faced the consequences of the United States military. So if there's ever a chance for a deal, again, the president is open to listening, but it does not deter him from focusing on the military objectives that he set out 30 days ago and that our military is continuing to achieve day by day.
On the shutdown, he signed the national emergency order last Thursday, making sure TSA officers will be paid. There's still other civilian DHS employees, however, who are not being paid.
Yes.
He signed something similar to ensure they also get.
Yes, indeed. Grumpy, working on getting into the White House as we speak. Thank you.
Look, the president will always look into ways that we can make sure that the American people are being taken care of and doing what's right by the American people. But again, it's ridiculous that the president even has to go to the length of working with the legal team and the Office of Management and Budget to identify these funds. It is the job of Congress to fund these agencies. And Democrats in Congress have voted 7 times against funding the Department of Homeland Security. Congress should come back and they should get it done. The president, again, made the decision to prevent this existential crisis we were seeing at our nation's airports across the country that was only going to get worse. And that's why he wants Congress to do his job.
Thank you, Caroline. Since you mentioned,
I'll go to you as well. Okay.
Since you mentioned Easter and prayers, I wanted to ask you about something the Pope said yesterday. So Pope Leo said yesterday, and I quote him, "God does not listen to the prayer of those who wage war." Can you comment on that?
I think
Okay, so she just asked her about what I told you guys previously. The Pope said God does not listen to the prayers of those that wage war. So let's see what Caroline has to say.
our nation was a nation founded 250 years ago almost on Judeo-Christian values. And we've seen presidents, we've seen the leaders of the Department of War, and we've seen our troops go to prayer during the most turbulent times in our nation's history. And I don't think there's anything wrong with our military leaders or with the president calling on the American people to pray for our service members and those who are serving our country overseas. In fact, I think it's a very noble thing to do. And if you talk to many service members, they will tell you they appreciate the prayers and support from the commander-in-chief and from his cabinet.
Caroline, thank you.
President Trump told the New York Post that a response is coming shortly to Tehran attacking Israel's largest oil refinery. Is there a timeline on that? Is that tied to the success or not of the negotiations?
I don't have any updates for you on the president's comments.
Does it consider the IRGC in control of Iran?
Well, look, as Secretary Rubio said today, the leadership is very fragmented. We have really neutered their intercommunication systems, and that's part of this process of diplomacy to continue figuring out exactly who's in charge. I know they appointed a new Ayatollah, haven't seen or heard much from him. And so that's part of this diplomatic process that's underway right now. I'll take a few more. Dolan.
Thank you. You listed the described humanitarian reasons for allowing that oil tanker to reach Cuba. Just to clarify, why was the administration okay with Russia sending that oil to Cuba and not other nations?
Look, again, this was a decision. It'll continue to be made on a case-by-case basis for humanitarian reasons or otherwise, but there's been no firm change in our sanctions policy.
President Sheinbaum of Mexico also said that Mexico is exploring different ways to restart some of those shipments to Cuba. Is the administration okay with that at this time?
Again, there's been no change in our sanction policy. We still reserve the right to seize vessels if it's legally applicable that are headed towards Cuba and that violate the United States sanction policy. But of course, the president and the administration also reserve the right to waive those seizures on a case-by-case basis.
And to clarify, just any more Russian oil tankers going to be allowed to reach Cuba at this time? I know you say case-by-case, but for the case of Russia, is it pretty much green light right now?
No, that's not what I said. It's a case-by-case basis.
Sure,
Jeff, go ahead.
Switching topics, the president has always attended CPAC. He did not this year. Why did he not attend, and does he believe CPAC is becoming less relevant?
No, I don't think he believes that at all. In fact, he loves CPAC and has a very good relationship with the great people who run it, Mercedes and Matt Schlapp. It was just simply for scheduling purposes this year, with it being in Texas. It was best for the president's schedule and what he has on his plate right now not to go.
Carolina.
Michael.
Thank you, Caroline. If and when
Michael.
a deal is finalized with Iran, how does the U.S. provide protection to who it's negotiating with to ensure that they can carry out the president's peace plan?
Again, that's something I'm sure our national security team is discussing. I don't have anything for you on that today.
The ballroom. Can you tell us more about this massive military complex underneath the president's new ballroom?
I cannot tell you more about that, actually, as a matter of fact. However, the military is making some upgrades to their facilities here at the White House, and I'm not privy to provide any more details on that at this time. Go ahead. Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Question on the Middle East and then a question on Antifa. Netanyahu said Sunday that Cardinal Pizzaballa will be able to hold services for Palm Sunday in the Church of Holy Sepulchre after he was initially blocked by Israeli police. Did anyone from the administration or the president call over to Israeli officials to assist the cardinal in this?
Yes, I did speak with Secretary Rubio this morning, and we did express our concerns with Israel with respect to these holy sites being shut down. We want worshipers to be able to access these holy sites. Of course, safety is a top priority, but we understand Israel is working on those security measures to reopen the sites throughout Holy Week, and that's something that we're appreciative of.
Antifa. In Texas, 9 people have been convicted by a federal jury on domestic terrorist charges connected to Antifa. The White House has previously indicated that you guys are investigating Antifa, who's funding them, who's leading them. Can you provide an update on how that investigation is going? And do you think we're going to see more charges against people connected to Antifa?
Well, I do know that there was an entire task force that was set up, an interagency task force to focus on the threat of Antifa, which, as you know, Reagan, this president declared a domestic terrorist organization rightfully, and we will continue to look into it. I don't have any updates on those specific investigations, but I'd be happy to have my team get those over to you today, as this continues to be of the utmost importance to the president and his domestic policy agenda.
Caroline, on one question on landmines, there's been some reporting that American-made landmines have been spotted on the ground in Iran. Did President Trump sign off on using U.S.-made landmines in Iran?
I don't have any comment on that report today.
Caroline, whether they're being used at all?
I don't have any comment on that.
Caroline.
Karen.
On DHS, you said that the president is encouraging Congress to come back to DC. You also
Yes.
said yourself. How has he done that? Has he told leadership that they should cancel recess and come back?
He said it repeatedly. I think you recall, he said that he'll host a big Easter dinner here at the White House if Congress will come back and fight the Democrats on this issue, which we should do. Because again, Democrat Party is in the wrong here. They have voted 7 times against funding the Department of Homeland Security, which is completely egregious with everything we have going on in the world. And these brave men and women who serve DHS deserve to get their paychecks. The president wants to see that happen, and he wants Congress to come back to get it done.
On the paychecks, Caroline.
Okay, thank you guys for tuning in today. We covered a lot of ground. We look forward to seeing you guys back tomorrow at noon for News at Noon, Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for all the comments. We had an overwhelming amount of comments. We had thousands of comments today. It's so amazing. I see a lot of new names. Make sure you subscribe to the channel before you leave so that, and also turn on your notifications so you know that when we go live and you can tune in and we can continue to hear from you in regards to these very important matters. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll keep you on deck for any new developments when it comes to gas prices, to the war, or anything else significant worth tuning in for. Thank you so much. We have some videos coming out, some good reaction videos. Make sure you check out the shorts and also the long form videos that has great information when it comes to true crime. Thank you to all the moderators who help us to stay afloat and keeping the comments and everything else in order. We thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow at noon. Thank you.
Different voices, but the same song. Living a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the flame remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.